us kissing
Oh
was
yeah.
the most horrifying thing either of us have
Yeah.
ever had to go through.
One of my favorite.
For more than 2 decades, the Harry Potter films and books have enchanted fans, sparking endless rewatches, debates, and theories. Devoted fans have scoured every frame and page, convinced they had uncovered all the hidden meanings and subtle details. Yet, some truths stayed beneath the surface. Subtle moments and insights that only later came to light through candid cast interviews, directorial commentary, or even clarifications from J.K. Rowling herself. These revelations weren't the obvious Easter eggs or plot twists fans proudly spotted, but rather the overlooked master strokes, behind-the-scenes stories, and creative decisions that reshaped how the wizarding world is understood. Now, join us as we take you through a few things that casts have shared that most fans couldn't catch on to even after all these years, showing that the magic still holds surprises. Harry Potter Mania and How the Boy Who Lived Took Over the World. When Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone first appeared on bookstore shelves in the United Kingdom in June 1997, it looked like any other children's fantasy novel. The initial print run was modest, just a measly 500 copies in hardback, many of which went straight to libraries.
English Harry Potter books in the Potter Collector Library, those are all kept at an undisclosed location.
Yet, within months, this small book about an orphan boy who discovered he was a wizard began to spread by word of mouth, creating a ripple that quickly turned into a tidal wave. What began as a children's story soon transformed into a cultural event unlike anything modern publishing had ever seen. The rise of Harry Potter wasn't instant stardom, but a phenomenon that built its reputation step by step, drawing in readers of all ages and backgrounds. By the turn of the millennium, the series had become more than just a collection of books. It was a movement, an identity, and, for many children, their first unforgettable reading experience. The craze it sparked was so widespread and powerful that it would shape a generation and alter the landscape of popular culture. Harry Potter was a masterpiece of its time, succeeding in doing something many didn't think of. And that's how, at the time, children's publishing rarely made international headlines. Popular series like Goosebumps had certainly found wide audiences, but they were often dismissed as light entertainment rather than cultural landmarks. Fantasy, especially, was seen as a niche, with Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings considered a classic, but largely confined to literary and genre circles. In the midst of all this, J.K. Rowling's story looked unassuming, considering that it had been rejected by multiple publishers before being picked up by Bloomsbury. From the beginning, there was something different about Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Teachers noticed that reluctant readers were devouring it. Librarians saw waiting lists grow longer and longer. Parents, expecting to humor their children by reading aloud, found themselves hooked on the adventures of Harry, Hermione, and Ron. The book's secret lay in its accessibility. It blended the whimsical charm of a fairy tale with the suspense of a mystery novel, set against the backdrop of a magical world that was detailed but not overwhelming. For children, the idea of receiving a letter to Hogwarts was irresistible, and for adults, the humor and clever plotting made it far more engaging than most children's books. Soon, families weren't just reading Harry Potter. They were living it, discussing it, and sharing it across dinner tables. By the time of the second book, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, the buzz was undeniable. Sales soared, translations into multiple languages began, and J.K. won a string of awards.
Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets takes the magic of the first book and darkens it just enough to keep you on the edge.
The third book, Prisoner of Azkaban, cemented the series' reputation as not just a publishing success, but a cultural phenomenon in the making. Children began dressing as wizards for Halloween, clutching makeshift wands fashioned from sticks. Schools organized reading clubs devoted to the books, and friendships formed around shared speculation over what might happen next in the story. At the dawn of the internet age, early message boards and fan sites sprang up, filled with theories, fan art, and predictions. Still, The true turning point came with the release of Goblet of Fire in 2000. By this point, Harry Potter wasn't just popular, it was dominating the global stage. The book had an unprecedented first printing of over 5 million copies in the United States alone.
Published in the U.S. just this week, advance orders for the new book totaled more than 1 million copies.
To ensure fairness, publishers coordinated international release dates, so children in London, New York, Sydney, and Tokyo could open the book at the same time. The mania had officially arrived. Perhaps the clearest sign of just how deep Harry Potter mania ran came with the midnight book launches. Bookstores around the world hosted elaborate events, with fans lining up hours in advance to be among the first to grab the new installment, sometimes in full costume. The atmosphere was more like a rock concert than a book release. Children waved wands, parents wore wizard hats, and communities transformed their local bookstores into mini Hogwarts for a night. Pottermania wasn't just limited to the young. Parents, teachers, and even grandparents joined the lines. Some read the books alongside their children, while others admitted to sneaking chapters ahead when the kids were asleep.
Famous Harry Potter. Can't even go to a bookshop without making the front page.
In a world where reading was often seen as a solitary activity, Harry Potter made it a shared activity, turning book launches into shared cultural moments. This cross-generational appeal meant that families could enjoy the books together. Parents who had grown up on Tolkien or Roald Dahl now found themselves bonding with their kids over Harry, Hermione, and Ron. Book clubs that had once focused on literary fiction were suddenly devoting meetings to Harry Potter. Newspapers published editorials analyzing the series' symbolism, and academics debated its moral and philosophical underpinnings. At the time, whether or not you read the books, you knew the names of Hogwarts houses, could recognize Harry's lightning bolt scar, and had at least heard of Quidditch. The success of the book was undeniable, and it was time to give the characters recognizable faces outside a page's description. The magic of Hogwarts brought to life on screen. When Warner Bros. Secured the film rights to the book, the world erupted on a whole new level. For many fans, the announcement of a film adaptation was both thrilling and terrifying. On one hand, it promised to bring the magic of Hogwarts to life in a way they had only imagined while reading. On the other hand, the stakes were high. Millions of children and adults around the world already had deeply personal visions of Harry, Hermione, and Ron in their heads, and everyone wondered nervously if Hollywood could do them justice. Few aspects of the film adaptation drew as much scrutiny as the casting process. Who would be the face of Harry Potter? What child could possibly carry the weight of a character who had become a cultural icon before ever appearing on screen? The search was long and tiring. Casting directors scoured schools across the UK, determined to find actors who not only looked the part, but could embody the spirit of J.K.'s characters. Thousands of children auditioned, but none seemed quite right for the lightning-scarred hero until a young Daniel Radcliffe caught the eye of director Chris Columbus. Daniel's casting sparked enormous media coverage. The British press scrutinized him. Fans debated whether he looked enough like Harry, and parents wondered whether a child so young could handle the pressure. But the moment his round glasses and earnest face appeared in promotional photos, many skeptics were silenced. For millions of children, he became their Harry, the living embodiment of a character they had loved on the page. The casting of Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley was no less dramatic. Emma Watson, with her articulate charm, and Rupert Grint, with his natural comedic timing, quickly won over fans. Together, the trio created a chemistry that carried the films and gave them heart. Other key roles, from Richard Harris as the wise Dumbledore to Alan Rickman's unforgettable turn as Severus Snape, increased the appeal of the adaptation beyond expectation. The cast wasn't just strong, it was iconic. When Warner Bros. Released Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone in 2001, the craze surrounding the books went into overdrive. Children who had grown up with J.K.'s words now saw them transformed into grand visuals. The soaring turrets of Hogwarts, the moving staircases, and the enchanted feast in the Great Hall all came alive. Suddenly, the wizarding world wasn't confined to their imagination. It was something you could see, hear, and believe in. The film's release was more than just a blockbuster premiere. It was treated like a global holiday. Red carpet events in London and New York drew massive crowds, while advance ticket sales broke records. Families who had lined up for books at midnight were now lining up for movie tickets, often wearing robes and carrying wands. The film itself was a box office juggernaut, earning nearly $1 billion worldwide. More importantly, it expanded the fan base far beyond readers. Children who hadn't picked up the books or weren't avid readers at all were quickly swept up in the mania after seeing the film. The story of Harry Potter was no longer confined to libraries and bedrooms. It had transcended into a cultural event. The release of each subsequent film turned into a major media event, amplifying the hype that had begun with the books. With Chamber of Secrets released in 2002, audiences flocked back to see the young cast grow into their roles. By Prisoner of Azkaban 2 years later, director Alfonso Cuarón introduced a darker, moodier tone, signaling that the franchise would mature alongside its audience. This evolution kept fans invested, allowing the series to retain the same generation of children who had picked up the books in the late 90s, while drawing in new fans along the way. Each film became more than just entertainment. It was a global conversation. Tabloids dissected behind-the-scenes gossip. Fans pored over trailers frame by frame for clues, and online forums buzzed with speculation about how faithfully the next installment would follow the books. The films weren't replacing the books. They were reinforcing them, giving fans new dimensions to analyze and debate. Merchandise tied to the films also exploded. Suddenly, children could own movie-accurate wands, house robes, and action figures modeled after the actors they saw on screen. The synergy between the books, films, and products ensured that Pottermania was no longer cyclical, tied only to book release dates. Instead, it became constant, renewed every time a new movie poster appeared or a teaser trailer dropped. One of the most unique aspects of the Harry Potter films was how the young cast aged in real time alongside the characters. Fans watched Daniel, Emma, and Rupert grow from children into teenagers and eventually into adults, mirroring Harry, Hermione, and Ron's journeys. This parallel development created an unusual bond between the cast and the audience. For many fans, the actors weren't just performers but companions who grew up alongside them. Kids who entered elementary school with Sorcerer's Stone graduated high school alongside the release of Deathly Hallows Part 2. The sense of shared coming-of-age made the franchise deeply personal. At the same time, the adult cast lent the films a following that elevated them beyond children's fare. Performers like Maggie Smith, Gary Oldman, and Ralph Fiennes brought Shakespearean weight to their roles, ensuring that adults in the audience were just as enthralled as their children. The blend of fresh young actors and seasoned veterans created a balance that sustained the franchise's credibility for a full decade. The actors themselves became international celebrities, their faces instantly recognizable around the world. With each release, the premieres grew larger, the lines at theaters longer, and the global box office records higher. While fans were captivated by what they saw on screen, countless things were happening behind the scenes: casting decisions, on-set dynamics, creative choices, and even Easter eggs that would only later be revealed. Secrets from the casts that fans never saw on screen. As the Harry Potter books and films captivated the world, audiences devoured every moment of the story, from Harry's first trip to Diagon Alley to the final battle at Hogwarts. But while millions were caught up in the magic on screen, countless details were happening just out of sight. Unscripted moments, subtle acting choices, and behind-the-scenes stories that only came to light years later when the cast began sharing them. These revelations, often overlooked in the initial frenzy, have since become treasured insights for fans revisiting the films with fresh eyes. One of the most surprising revelations from the cast is how many iconic moments weren't actually in the script. Daniel Radcliffe once admitted that some of Harry's quirks, such as his tendency to push his glasses up on his nose, came from necessity rather than direction. The glasses constantly slipped during filming, and instead of cutting, he incorporated the movement into Harry's character. This became so natural that many fans assumed it was a deliberate acting choice, reflecting Harry's shy awkwardness. Rupert Grint also contributed his own touches to Ron Weasley. His frequent nervous giggles and bumbling mannerisms weren't always written into the script. Much of Ron's comedic timing was improvised, giving the character warmth and relatability beyond the page. Emma Watson, meanwhile, famously added her own know-it-all energy to Hermione. Directors encouraged her to lean into her natural intelligence and precociousness, resulting in line deliveries that felt sharper and more authentic than anyone had anticipated. Even minor interactions sometimes came from improvisation. Tom Felton revealed that in early scenes, he deliberately sneered or rolled his eyes at Daniel and Rupert to create tension, which the cameras picked up beautifully. The chemistry between the actors wasn't just scripted. It grew naturally from playful rivalries and genuine friendships on set. One of the recurring themes in these confessions is that the wizarding world, for all its movie magic, wasn't immune to mishaps, accidents, and even heartbreak. Take the Hogwarts Express, for instance. To millions of fans, it symbolized the start of adventure, but in reality, it twice fell victim to real-life vandalism. In 2003, pranksters managed to cover part of the train in silver and green graffiti while it was parked at a depot. A few years later, another group smashed several of its windows using the emergency hammers, forcing costly repairs and reminding everyone that even icons of cinema weren't safe from teenage recklessness. Daniel Radcliffe confessed to having his own brush with danger while shooting the underwater sequence for the Triwizard Tournament in Goblet of Fire. During one take, he mistakenly gave the scuba team the wrong signal, accidentally indicating he was out of air rather than simply all good. Trainers rushed him to the surface, and while the incident ended harmlessly, it showed how physically demanding and risky some of the magical set pieces actually were for young actors who appeared calm and composed on screen. Not every behind-the-scenes story had such a harmless ending. In 2009, Daniel's stunt double, David Holmes, was badly injured while filming a complex stunt. A controlled explosion during a flying sequence went wrong, sending him crashing to the ground and leaving him paralyzed from the chest down. David had been with the film since the very beginning, and his accident was a sobering reminder of the very real dangers behind fantasy filmmaking. Despite the tragedy, he has remained close with Radcliffe and Tom Felton, who frequently speak about their admiration for his resilience. Meanwhile, during the climactic Hogwarts battle in Deathly Hallows, a pyrotechnic misfire sparked a fire that engulfed part of the castle replica. More than 100 crew members scrambled to contain the flames, and although no one was hurt, and the damage was limited to a section already due for rebuilding, tabloids breathlessly reported that Hogwarts had burned. For the crew, it was just another day in the unpredictable life of filmmaking, albeit one that felt eerily appropriate given the destruction they were meant to be staging. Comedian Rick Mayall was initially cast as Peeves the Poltergeist, but his performance proved so hysterically funny that the young actors couldn't keep a straight face whenever he was on set. Even when asked to deliver his lines with his back turned, Mayall's antics had the children in stitches, throwing production into chaos. Ultimately, his scenes were cut, leaving Peeves absent from the final films, but fans still speculate about what might have been if his energy had been left in the mix. Sometimes the most memorable moments were the ones no one planned. During the infamous Prisoner of Azkaban confrontation, where Hermione lashes out at Draco, Emma Watson was supposed to deliver a light slap. Instead, perhaps caught up in the tension of the scene, she landed a full punch on Tom Felton's face. Tom later joked that she had a surprisingly strong hook and admitted he was left rattled by the unexpected blow. Later admitted to a special friendship during filming, Emma confessed she had a childhood crush on Tom, something fans hadn't guessed at the time. Perhaps the most famous behind-the-scenes revelation came from Alan Rickman, who portrayed Severus Snape. While audiences debated for years whether Snape was a hero or villain, Alan was entrusted with the truth early on by J.K. Rowling herself. He knew Snape's entire character arc, including his love for Lily Potter, long before the final books were published. This insider knowledge informed every one of his subtle acting choices. Fans now revisit his scenes with new appreciation, noting how he injected moments of tenderness or hesitation into his otherwise cold demeanor. A lingering glance at Harry, a quiet pause before delivering a sharp line, these nuances were invisible at the time, but resonate deeply once you know the full story. Daniel Radcliffe later admitted that as a young actor, he never understood why Alan performed certain scenes the way he did. Only after learning the truth in later years did he recognize that Alan had been carefully laying the groundwork all along. The actors have been candid about the immense pressure of living up to fan expectations. Daniel Radcliffe often spoke about how intimidating it was to become the face of such a beloved character. He was only 11 when cast, yet the world placed the burden of Harry Potter on his shoulders, and he admitted that he sometimes doubted whether he could carry the franchise. Emma Watson revealed that she felt enormous pressure to embody Hermione, a character who had already become a role model for millions of young readers. She worried constantly about whether she was good enough for the part. Ironically, her perfectionism mirrored Hermione's own, making her portrayal even more authentic. Rupert Grint confessed that he often felt overshadowed by his co-stars, worrying that Ron was seen as just the funny sidekick. Only later did he recognize the emotional depth Ron brought to the trio, especially in the later films. Daniel Radcliffe has spoken warmly of his mentorship under Richard Harris, the original Dumbledore, who offered guidance and humor on set before his passing in 2002. After Michael Gambon took over the role, the dynamic shifted, but he carried Richard's lessons with him. The cast weren't the only ones to reveal subtle behind-the-scenes additions, as even J.K. Rowling and some of the directors added little Easter eggs that contributed to the story's success, Easter eggs, and overlooked details. While the cast's behind-the-scenes confessions add heart to the Harry Potter story, the author and directors were weaving a web of secrets, clues, and subtleties from the very beginning. Many of these were invisible to audiences swept up in the mania of book releases and blockbuster films, but years later, they've been uncovered by insiders, and even J.K. herself. The Harry Potter universe wasn't just entertaining, it was layered, designed to reward sharp eyes and rereads with hidden depths. J.K. Rowling became famous for her meticulous plotting. She once admitted that she mapped out the series years before finishing it, sketching timelines and family trees to ensure every detail would align. This level of planning meant that subtle hints planted in early books didn't pay off until much later. One of the most striking examples is the very first book. In Sorcerer's Stone, Professor Quirrell casually mentions that Snape knows a lot about countercurses. At the time, it seems like a throwaway detail, but by Deathly Hallows, it becomes clear that Snape's mastery of defensive spells is crucial to his character and to Harry's survival. Similarly, in Chamber of Secrets, Tom Riddle's diary introduces the concept of Horcruxes long before the term is ever explained. At the time, readers saw the diary as just another cursed object. Only later did J.K. reveal it as the first Horcrux Harry encounters, foreshadowing Voldemort's path to immortality. She also planted subtle clues about Harry himself. From the very beginning, his ability to speak Parseltongue hinted at the fragment of Voldemort's soul inside him. While fans thought it was simply a neat, magical talent, rereading the books after the reveal makes it chillingly clear that the signs were there all along. Even smaller details carried hidden meaning. In Prisoner of Azkaban, The names of Harry's father and his friends, the Marauders, seem like fun nicknames: Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. But in hindsight, these names are carefully chosen, foreshadowing of their animagus forms and Remus Lupin's lycanthropy. For attentive readers, these Easter eggs rewarded close attention. She loved layering meaning into her character names, though many fans didn't catch the references until later. Remus Lupin's name, for instance, is a double clue where Remus refers to the Roman myth of Romulus and Remus, twin brothers raised by a wolf, while Lupin stems from lupus, the Latin word for wolf. His werewolf identity was hiding in plain sight. Similarly, Sirius Black's name references the dog star in the constellation Canis Major, directly hinting at his animagus form. Severus Snape's name, with its sharp and hissing sound, evokes menace, while Severus means stern in Latin. Even Malfoy translates roughly to bad faith in French. For casual readers, these names were simply part of the world building, but for those with a keen eye, they were puzzle pieces pointing to deeper truths about the characters. When the films entered the picture, directors and set designers delighted in embedding hidden details into the wizarding world. For instance, the moving portraits on the walls of Hogwarts often depict obscure witches and wizards from J.K. Rowling's extended lore. Attentive viewers can spot characters like Barnabas the Barmy or Elizabeth Burke in the background, names that hardcore fans recognize from the books. In Prisoner of Azkaban, Alfonso Cuarón famously encouraged the set designers to fill the film with tiny details, knowing that audiences would re-watch and discover new things each time. A prime example is the appearance of the Marauders' map. Beyond showing footsteps, it includes Easter eggs, like two background characters kissing in a corner, or Peter Pettigrew's name lingering long before his reveal as Scabbers. The films also sprinkled in playful nods. In Chamber of Secrets, when Harry and Ron crash the flying Ford Anglia into the Whomping Willow, you can spot a license plate reading 7990TD, which, in UK car registry trivia, is teased to echo J.K. Rowling's own car's registration number. It was a tease to insiders, invisible to casual fans. Beyond names and plot devices, she crafted her characters with subtle traits that often went unnoticed. For example, Hermione's activism for house elves in Goblet of Fire seemed like a comedic side plot. Many readers dismissed it as irrelevant, yet in reality, it reflects her moral compass and predicts her later role in fighting systemic injustices within the wizarding world. Neville Longbottom is another character whose importance was easy to miss. He is often portrayed as bumbling or cowardly in the early books, but his growth into a courageous hero in Deathly Hallows was the final transformation. J.K. had hinted at Neville's quiet resilience in earlier books, such as his determination to stand up to his friends in Sorcerer's Stone, something even Dumbledore has praised. For fans rereading with hindsight, his journey feels inevitable. Even the Weasley twins carried layers of meaning. Their pranks and jokes masked moments of surprising wisdom, often giving Harry the tools or confidence he needed at key times. Their inventiveness with magical objects gave viewers an early idea of the role they would play as entrepreneurs, turning their mischief into a lasting legacy. J.K.'s love for symbolic objects also added layers that fans often overlooked. Harry's wand, for instance, shares its phoenix feather core with Voldemort's, linking their fates from the very beginning. At first, this seems like a mere plot device to explain why their spells interact strangely, but as the series progresses, it becomes a profound metaphor for their shared destiny. The invisibility cloak, another seemingly fun magical tool, later emerges as one of the Deathly Hallows. Its presence in the very first book was her planting seeds for the series' ultimate climax. Few readers could have guessed its significance until the reveal in Book 7, making its reappearance retroactively mind-blowing. Even the mirror of Erised in Sorcerer's Stone serves as more than a whimsical magical object. It expresses her theme of desire and longing, hinting at Harry's eternal struggle between personal happiness and selfless duty. Different directors left their own signature Easter eggs across the films. Chris Columbus leaned heavily on faithfulness to the books, often recreating scenes with painstaking accuracy. Alfonso Cuarón, by contrast, added atmospheric details like the whomping willow marking the changing seasons in Prisoner of Azkaban. David Yates, who directed the final 4 films, frequently used color palettes and lighting to mirror the emotional states of the characters. These were small cues many audiences didn't consciously register, but felt deeply. For example, as the series darkens, the colors shift from the warm golden glow of early Hogwarts to the cold, desaturated hues of Deathly Hallows. Viewers immersed in the story might not have noticed this transition, but it subtly shaped how they experienced the characters' growing despair. Overall, Harry Potter remains a story that has conquered both the literary and cinematic world and continues to offer more to fans who go back to reread or experience it. What do you think? Were there any hidden clues you picked out before this? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. To enjoy more exciting videos, click play on the video on your screen. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when a new video is released.